Hi, my name is Amy Smeed, and I was one of the heads of animation for Moana 2.
How did you start your career in animation?
So my backstory is I went to an art school and I was studying painting and drawing. I wanted to be a painter. In I think it was my third year of school, I took an animation course and totally fell in love with the craft of animation and the idea of telling stories through animation. So I pivoted that choice, and then once I graduated from school, I got into the studio of Disney in a slightly different department, and I would spend a lot of time using the character rigs that we had at the studio just to build my portfolio to become a stronger animator. And then on the project of Chicken Little, Disney started up their trainee program, so I applied to the trainee program and got accepted, and then I was given an official mentor, and then I went through the trainee program, was promoted to an assistant animator, and then to an animator after that. And then I animated for about 13 years. And then Moana was looking for a head of animation, and I ended up putting my name in the hat for that, and I was given one of those positions. There were two of us.
How did technology evolve from the first Moana to the second?
So there's been a lot of technology advancements just with simple everyday things like tools that we have. We are crafting our performances, and so some of the additional tools helps us be able to do that a little bit quicker. So for example, with the rigs, our rigs have evolved quite a bit over the years, where we're given more controls, and it gives us the ability to make any type of facial expression that we want. For example, we have controls over even things like eyelashes, so it gets very detailed. And then the other, I would say, kind of big advancement were ropes, which sounds silly, but ropes are incredibly challenging to animate. It's basically a long rope, it doesn't have a face, but there's some technology involved in getting us better rope rigs so that all the times Moana's tying knots and things like that, we're able to get to that sooner so we can really focus on the craft of animating a character like Moana.
Sailing is obviously an important aspect of the film. How did you make sure it was accurate?
So in this film, this is 3 years later, and Moana has spent that past 3 years on the ocean looking for new islands and for people. And because of all of that sailing experience that she's had, she is very comfortable on her canoe. She's very comfortable with the ropes and the mast, and she's an incredible sailor. For us, we got very lucky because one of our visual effects supervisors and our production designer are also both sailors, so they were able to help us as we're crafting her performance, figuring out what type of rope to use or how she would use that rope, because I myself am not a sailor. So having someone in that room was super helpful.
How did you approach the animation of the choreographies?
Yeah, so we were very lucky. On the first film, we worked with a choreographer named Tiana, and we got to work with her again on this film. So we would show her song sequences before it was coming to us in animation, and then she would go, and she had some dancers she worked with, and they would craft a very specific performance for some of our song sequences. And then she would come back with that choreography, and then we would use that as inspiration as we're crafting the performance. There are also times where we might be doing a pose or just a hand gesture, and we would also reach out to Tiana to say, Tiana, how would you do this hand gesture? And she was able to give us reference for things like that as well. That way we can really get specific with the culture.
The water in Moana is both a character and a visual effect. How did you animate the ocean and give it personality?
Yeah, the water is a very fun character to animate. It can be very challenging too, because we don't have a face. So basically we had a very kind of a simple rig. It looked a lot like a sock puppet. So for instance, if you have the water coming up and doing a head nod, you can do it very quick, and that is going to have one sort of feeling, or a head nod that's very slow is going to evoke a completely different feeling. So for us in animation, it's really important to think about those things as the timing and the spacing and just the overall shape of the water to try to convey a feeling. And then it was a very large collaboration with us and our effects animators, where then they would take what we built with the shape and timing with that rig, and then they would integrate it back into the ocean and make it look like it's part of the ocean, adding all the bubbles and all of those effects.
How are the sailing scenes animated? Do you animate the characters and the boat first, and then the VFX team simulates the water underneath?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. So for the majority of the time, our layout department, which is the department figuring out all the cameras, they're often also figuring out what is the speed of the canoe on the ocean, and then that would give us a generic sort of wave that we could then handcraft afterwards, but it would give us the motion of the canoe that we would then set the characters on, and they're going to interact differently depending on how big a wave is, for example. For some of our storm sequences, we also had a lot of that wave animation before it came to us. There was some collaboration with our effects team where they might create a wave and then it comes back to us to make adjustments. So we're iterating back and forth. But for the most part, we were given the ocean, the waves as we're animating.
Can you talk about the animation of Mini Maui?
So Mini Maui, we were super lucky because Eric Goldberg, who probably many of you know, he led the team of 2D artists. We had a lot of CG animators that really wanted to work on any scene with Maui so they would have a chance to collaborate with Eric and his team. It was such a special process. So basically they would animate in 2D, we would animate in CG, and then we would be able to put their 2D onto Maui so that we can show the director both of them at the same time for them to approve.
And what about Maui's transformation?
So basically, that was complicated, but we tried to make it work in a simple way in terms of we would take two character rigs. So if Maui is going to transform into the hawk, for example, we would have the Maui hawk as one rig and Maui as a rig, and then we would come up with interesting shapes to make that transformation very quickly. But basically we had two separate rigs that we would craft. It's interesting if you step through those frames just to see all the interesting ways that animators were coming up with those transformations. Also another collaboration with our lighting department because they also have that quick lighting transformation in there.
Can you tell us about the cultural representation in Moana 2 and how it was done so accurately?
Yeah, so we have the Oceanic Cultural Trust, which is a large group of people, and they were part of the original film as well as this film, and we basically would show them every step through the process to make sure that we're being culturally authentic to the people in the Pacific Islands. So it's a ton of research always goes into every single one of these films. The filmmakers spend a lot of time visiting different islands and different cultures, talking to the people, and then having the consultants, which was really important for us.
What is your personal definition of animation?
For us, crafting believable performances that audiences are going to fall in love with our characters. I think as animators, it's one of my favorite things to do as I'm first starting a scene is crafting that performance, coming up with the acting choices for what the character is going to do, and then presenting that work to the directors. You hope that they're going to like it, but we're breathing life into these characters and making them sometimes do impossible things. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.